Did you know that there can be strict deadlines when it comes to submitting FAFSA? And did you know that if missing those deadlines, it can cost your family tens of thousands of dollars? One quick story, I had a family reach out to us because they missed out on $40,000 per year from a major university. I don't want to say which one, simply because they missed submitting FAFSA by the school's deadline. They did not even know that there was a deadline that needed to be met specifically for the school for FAFSA, and so they missed out on this money. And the worst part was they missed out on it by the admissions deadline, which means that that was actually considering their student for all 4 years of money, and they'll never be considered again for that type of money again. So they literally missed out on over $160,000 in funding for the university. It was a huge hit for them. Now, this is why it is so important for your family to understand the deadlines behind FAFSA, and so that's what I want to cover today. Now, make sure you hit subscribe because every single week we release a new strategy to help your family avoid student loan debt and work towards that debt-free degree with your student. And as you can see, this is a big one. Hey there, my name is Jocelyn Pearson, founder of the Scholarship System and Debt Free Degree Lab, where this is what we do. We literally help families work towards a strong financial future rather than one buried in debt. Now, our main weapon against student debt are scholarships. In fact, our families have secured over $10.5 million in scholarships. But the other part to this is trying to get as much money from the university as possible. And submitting FAFSA is the way to do that. This is not just accessing money from universities, but it's also from the state and from federal. So let's get into the three main deadlines we need to pay attention to. Now, FAFSA opens up October 1st of your student's senior year, and then you want to submit it every year thereafter. So October 1st is a big day for all families that have students that will be attending college in the future. Now, I actually tell our families in our programs not to worry about submitting it on that day. I know that it's nerve-wracking and they just want to get it over with, but usually there are some bugs, there are some kinks, the site crashes, everyone's rushing to do it, and it just becomes stressful for the parents. So you do not have to submit it on October 1st, but we do recommend submitting it as early as possible, maybe in the middle of October or by the end of October, so that we're safe on these deadlines. Now, that said, we still want to make sure that we are looking up the specific deadlines so we don't even risk missing those. Now, before I get to the deadlines, just another quick perk of making sure that we submit this earlier is that it can give us more time. Perhaps we can get our results sooner from the universities. Therefore, we can have more time to make those financial decisions, which are so critical for our students' future. It can also give us time to do any kind of verification or corrections that we need to do. Maybe numbers were wrong or the schools have questions. So the earlier, the better for that. And then lastly, some places are first come, first serve. So it can put us in the running for money ahead of all of the other families that do not know to submit this early. Now, we have an entire playlist on FAFSA tips on how to submit it, mistakes to watch out for, so make sure you check that out after this video, and we'll link to that in the description. Now, in addition to submitting FAFSA, we also want to make sure that we are submitting scholarship applications. So that is something that your student can be doing while you're working on the FAFSA application. So if you want to learn where to find legitimate scholarships, how to make sure that your student's applying to the right ones, you can attend my free training. You can go to thescholarshipsystem.com/free webinar, or you can click on the link in the description as well, or somewhere here on the screen. All right, so that said, let's get into the first of the three deadlines. The first one is the school deadline. So like I shared earlier, that school in my story had a very hard cutoff, and if missed, they did not make any exceptions, no mercy. Now, these deadlines can vary school to school, so if your student is applying to multiple universities and colleges, you will want to keep track of all of the different deadlines based on each school's requirements. Now, if your family is selected for verification, they may also have deadlines for when you can submit any kind of materials. So then you also want to make sure that you're paying attention to that deadline as well. Now, if you also want to submit an appeal, which we have a whole video on financial aid appeals as well, then you may also have a deadline for that. So as you can see, the universities, they have deadlines for each step in the process. A lot of it is based on FAFSA, and there's a reason for that. They are processing so many different students, thousands and thousands of students every single week, if not every single day. And so they need to make sure everything's submitted on time. So there is a deadline pretty much for every step of the process. So that said, know the deadlines. Ask the financial aid office if it's not obvious on their website. First, check the website because they are getting bombarded by messages, but know the deadlines for each and every school. The deadline to submit FAFSA, deadline to submit verification stuff if you're selected, and don't panic if you are, it's okay. And then a deadline to submit any kind of financial aid appeals. Now, the second deadline with FAFSA is simply the FAFSA deadline. And this is typically June 30th. So it can also in the past, kind of the rule of thumb was with the taxes, you also want to get FAFSA submitted. But honestly, by this point, you'd probably have missed some deadlines that are important for the university. So I really wouldn't wait until this deadline. That said, for this upcoming year, students have from October 1st, technically until June 30th to submit FAFSA to be considered for federal financial aid. So at least that gives a little bit of leeway there. But again, we don't want to wait that long anyway. Now, one situation where maybe you're hearing this and your student already did a semester at school, there are some situations where a student can actually be paid retroactively for federal funds that they would have received had they submitted FAFSA. So that might be something that you want to ask the university about if that fits your family situation. Okay, now the last deadline is based on your state's deadline. Did you know that there is specific money given by the states in many states based on FAFSA as well? So this is not just about accessing, again, federal money or even money through the school, but also state-based grants that they give out. So we want to make sure that we're paying attention to those deadlines as well. We're going to include a link in the description so you can check out some deadlines there. But one example is California. They have generally a deadline at the beginning of March, but then you have Delaware where theirs is typically around May. So this varies state by state. So you want to make sure that you know this deadline as well. Now comment below, what state are you in and what is your state's FAFSA deadline? Or if you want to share, what university are you looking at and what is their deadline as well? I'd love to see just the variety of deadlines, and I think it would be helpful for other parents to see as well. Okay, so just a quick recap. Like I mentioned, FAFSA is critical for funding for college, not just from the college, but from the government, the federal government, and the state government as well. Even if it does not necessarily provide your student with debt-free money, it could open up the possibility of getting federal-based loans, which always have better terms for your student for borrowing. So no matter what, it's critical to submit FAFSA. The earlier, the better. And then there are 3 key deadlines: the college deadline, the FAFSA deadline, and the state deadline. So we want to make sure that we are paying attention to all of those based on each college that that our student is applying to. Now, again, don't forget to sign up for that free webinar that I mentioned in the training where we can turn our focus to scholarships then, so that hopefully we can get additional money beyond what the FAFSA can give us. And you will find the link in the description along with the links to the other resources that we mentioned earlier in the video. All right, I hope to see you in the next video.